Okay, I will start this evening with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge that we stand on the traditional lands of the Cammeraygal people, which always was and always will be Aboriginal land. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and the waters, and we show our respect for elders past, present, and emerging. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephen Catley. I'm a lead recruiter for APJ at Okta. Extremely excited to be hosting Girls in Tech this evening. So I'll hand over the reins to Christine.
Thank you. And thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Okta, for having us this beautiful office. And thank you, everyone, for attending in the room. For those who don't know me, my name is Christine Rodriguez. I am the co-managing director of Girls in Tech in Australia. And this is our last live Girls in Tech Girl Boss Night for 2022. Can you hear me now? No. It is on. All right, I might have to. Okay, 1 second. We'll do it this way. We'll multitask. So, for those who are new to Girls in Tech, we're a not-for-profit. We are a global organisation and we've been in operation since 2007. We were started by a woman called Adriana Gascoigne. And for those who might have noticed on the way in, one of her books is actually there for the taking. So if you're lucky enough to grab it on the way out, please do so. Here in the room with me tonight is also 2 members from our board from Girls in Tech. We have P at the back, hello, and Mama Cats, Karen, also selling merchandise at the back of the room. So for those who are new to our community, and has anyone had been to an event before? A couple, yeah, okay. Couple have, couple haven't. We are an organisation that we're basically here to empower, educate and enable women to thrive and be as great as they can be in the technology industry. We have all of you here in the room joining us tonight, as well as a couple of hundred people dialing in from all over Australia. Right now, our organisation is sitting at about 65,000 community members like yourselves globally, and we're about 12,000 strong in Australia alone. So we're growing, which is great. These events wouldn't be possible without our volunteer community. So we have lots of volunteers here tonight. Guys, give yourselves a wave, maybe a bit of a clap. Anyone with a pink sticker who help us put on these events. Who help us put on these events, run these events to be able to deliver them to you for free all year round. We also have a hackathon once a year. I think there's someone in the room who was in our hackathon this year. Yes, at the back. Hello, thank you for representing. We also have yourself, yes, a couple. We also have a big conference that we hold in Melbourne in May, which we're going to be holding again next year. So keep an eye out for that one. Now, we also couldn't be here without our sponsors. So thank you, Okta, who is a partner of ours, a new partner of ours, for welcoming us here and basically putting on all the food and cheese and wine and all the things that, you guys love. We also wouldn't be here without our amazing panelists. So tonight we're also here to hear from some fantastic speakers, and our topic tonight is a journey of a technologist. So we have some fantastic speakers. I'm going to all get yourselves to introduce yourselves while I play with this microphone. But I'll kick off. My name's Christine. Obviously, you've heard that before. My day job, I actually work at Adobe in strategic alliances, so I do have a day job. And my question for you all is kick off as an icebreaker. So where you're from, what you do, is what is your favorite app on your phone right now? So if anybody knows me, I don't really like reading, which is a bit of a shocking one, but I'm not huge on reading. I'm also not huge on podcasts, but I do love to consume a lot of content, which obviously puts me in a bit of a situation. So I got an app called Speechify, where I can put any web page or PDF into it and it reads it to me. Fantastic. So I do love walking. So I put all my, McKinsey's reports and all these great things that I have to read on a weekly basis into it. And it just, as I'm walking along Bondi Beach, it sort of spits back out. So that's my favorite app. Jim, I'm going to pass it over to you from Okta.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jim. I work for Okta. I run a solution engineering team across Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. And my favorite apps, I've got 2. Can I have 2?
Yeah.
Okay. When I'm out of town, it's Google Maps, because I get lost. And when I'm in Melbourne, it's the bomb, because the Melbourne weather, you know where to go.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily Bobbis. I am a co-founder of a company called Compass IoT. We use data from cars to help transport professionals build better, safer cities. Favorite apps? I'm probably also going to do two. Notion is a really big one. I'm a really big Notion fangirl. And the second one is a teleprompter. So we do a lot of like video submissions for things, and it's really awesome if you have the video on the screen and your speech is scrolling past. Makes it look like you're not looking at the camera, so you're not doing the awkward camera notes kind of situation. So I'd recommend a teleprompter. I think it's literally just called teleprompter, which is really convenient. There's a couple of them, but I think that's the one that's on my phone.
Hi, I'm Caroline Nesbitt. I'm a director at EY. I look after data and analytics for all insurance companies in New South Wales. My favorite app is, I'm actually an avid reader. I love reading, but I also have two children that don't like me reading. So Script is an app that I have that it has all audio books, a whole range of content for free, but also useless information that you don't need, which I love. Like, you know, it has like legal documents, like the case of Roe versus this, versus that, and you can read about it. It's fantastic. It's a complete time waster. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Katie. I'm from Petra, head of engineering. I've got a team of about almost 70, 80 people. I'm a software engineer by trade. I'll hold it. I was going to do this before. My favorite apps are Clash of Clans, bit of a Clash of Clans fan, not gonna lie. I'm not very good at it, I'm also, but anyway. And I've got this one, I think I was put on the planet to annoy my husband as much as possible. I've got this one that's an earthquake app. And in the middle of the night, because earthquakes, you know, it only alarms when it's over 7 magnitude, and that seems to be the other side of the world. So it goes off at 3 in the morning, and I have a look and I go, guess what? There's an earthquake in Peru. And you're welcome.
Can you guys hear me? No. I'm not the mic. Okay. I've been caught in 2 earthquakes in 2019. So I'm banned from work travel now because the one in Japan and one in Thailand. And when you wake up in the morning and you Google, was that an earthquake? Nothing comes up because it's too soon. So like that app would be perfect for me. Now, talking about the journey of a technologist, you guys introduce yourselves, what you do. I'm going to move this thing. So we're here to myth bust a little bit around, you know, what it's like to be a technologist. You know, who's a technologist? What makes you a technologist? Are you working in tech? Are you a non-tech person in a tech company, or a techie in a non-tech company? All these different scenarios. You don't have to like Star Wars. You don't have to like, you know, sitting in a dark room coding. We're going to try get over some of those misconceptions and hear from some experts who have made a living out of being a technologist. So we're going to start walking sort of one by one through all these journeys. So as a techie, we're going to start with Jim. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you got into technology and, you know, when you first started out and how you sort of landed in your first role.
Sure, yeah. I did a computer science degree, engineering at Monash, and because I was good at maths, that's how I chose that course. And my first job was for Australia's second most popular airline. It doesn't exist. Anyone know it? Answer. Anyone that's old enough to know Answer. And the great thing about that was it was a graduate recruitment program, and it gave me a lot of diversity in my role. I could skip. I worked in the data warehouse, on the mainframe team, all sorts of different teams, and it gave me a bit of a different view. So I recommend, like, if you're just getting into it and you're getting out of university, a grad role is a really great way of starting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's a good, yeah. And if those of you that don't know Ansett, it did collapse in the early 90s.
It was my fault.
It wasn't your fault. I was part of the little Ansett Starship group, like little kids club. And they used to send you little things in the mail, and then they stopped. It's really hard as a child. Now, Katie, I'm going to flip over to you. You're all in a different order, so you're going to pass this mic around. You studied to be an architect, which is what you told me. Can you share how you moved from that into technology?
Sure. So I chose architecture because I grew up in Brisbane, and my parents, who were the fountain of knowledge of all things, told me that I couldn't do anything other than architecture, even though they are scientists and knew nothing about it either. But anyway, I was good at design and I was good at maths, and so they said, well, you'll be a good architect. And so I studied that for 6 years and wasted a huge amount of money. Got out, did 6 months as an architect and thought, I do not want to do another minute of this. So I gave that up, and I actually had a unique set of skills. I ended up getting a job as a building manager, graphic designer. So for companies that do things like lifts and elevators and make doors open and close and tell you whether it's too hot and whether the air conditioning's working. And it was unique because they needed someone who could use AutoCAD, which you can if you do architecture, and they needed someone that could do some graphic design. So I could kind of do both. So I got this job doing graphic interfaces, and I just really took to it. And from there, I learned some web coding, web design, meandered my way through and became a front-end engineer. And that was my specialty. And I landed some great jobs along the way. Worked for QB Insurance for 5 years and had my kids, which was always good. Actually, they're not always good, but anyway. I went to News Digital, so I got some experience with media. Then I landed a job with CommBank, with CBA, and I became the front-end expert for NetBank, which is their biggest banking platform. And that was just an amazing experience. And then I've stuck with finance, I'll be honest. And I went to PwC for 5 years, looked after their front-end engineering for a global thing. And then been poached ever since. So I've kind of been jumping jobs since. And I think I'm in my dream job right now. It's a pet insurance company. We have dogs in the office and cats. And yeah, and I have to say, having a fur baby at your feet while you're dealing with people is really awesome.
Need an office just with pets, just for future reference. No people, just pets.
Yeah, I'd be quite happy with. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so we're all following this at the moment. We've got airline and construction-ish architectural. Carolyn, you have science background. You have a PhD. Do I call you doctor? Is that?
Please.
I can. So I would imagine if you had a science background, you're working in a lab somewhere, but not. Give us a little bit around, how you ended up in tech from where you started.
Look, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I actually studied psychology, thinking I would be a psychologist. And my dad, the fountain of all things good, was like, please, for the love of God, don't get a degree in psychology and philosophy, pick up a proper science. And so I picked up chemistry along the way. And then I found I really liked, medicinal chemistry. There was, treatment of psychological diseases with drugs. Then after 5 years of that, I was like, oh my God, a lab is just not for me. I don't see people. I don't do anything. There's no output. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I applied to 1 billion grad programs, and I got an opportunity with Accenture to come and join their tech consulting function. I didn't know what tech consulting was. I Googled it. It really didn't shed any light on what tech consulting was. It still doesn't if you Google it 10 years later, I'm sure. And we don't really know what we do either. But I made my way to Accenture. I wanted to join data and analytics, but I didn't have that opportunity. So basically job hopped for a long time, looking for the opportunities as they presented themselves. I went from Accenture. I wanted to progress and do something different to what I was doing, but they were like, no. And I was like, okay, find the next job. All right, I wanted to stay there and do that. And then I had an opportunity to do something which I really thought I'd love. And so I took that opportunity, even though I loved that job. Turned out it wasn't as amazing as I thought it was. So I then jumped again and found myself where I am, which is in data and analytics, which is where I always wanted to work. But it just took me a long time to kind of get there.
So a lot of moving around in a lot of these stories I'm hearing. Jim, we're going to hear more about your moving around too. I feel there's a lot coming there. Emily, so you are the founder of a technology company. You're in probably an earlier stage of your career, but can you take us back to where you started before your own company?
Sure. It feels ages ago, even though it probably wasn't. I also did a psychology degree, funnily enough. There must be something about psychology degrees and then not actually doing psychology. And then after I did that, I did what everyone does who doesn't know what they want to do when they finish uni. I went back to uni, I did postgrad. So my background is in psychology. I did political theory, and I tacked on a language because I like to punish myself, Mandarin Chinese. I don't ask me to do any, there's not an invitation. I've lost a lot of it because of COVID. But so that was kind of my foray in the whole reason I even got into entrepreneurship and innovation and tech was because I was trying to avoid a 40% essay at uni. It was a book report. Didn't know how to do the book report. Lecturer came in one day and was like, hey, there's a really cool opportunity to send 4 of you to Singapore. And if you go to Singapore, you don't have to do the book report. I'm like, I have no interest in whatever this trip is, but I do know I'm interested in not the book report. So I applied and only 4 people applied. So got in by default. And that was the trip where I actually met my co-founder. So uni trips where you pull all your money in together and then go out and buy food with it is a really good way to get into tech, apparently. So then went on to start, this might be jumping ahead in your questions, I don't know, went to start Airbike. Yes.
That's where I was going with that.
Okay, perfect,
Yes,
good, just making sure. Went to start Airbike, which was is a bike sharing startup. At the time, it was the first Australian owned and operated. We got a monopoly contract down in Canberra, so we were the only bike sharing operator allowed in Canberra, because that was at the time we had all the onslaught of like all the different Chinese manufacturers come in. Really great story about the bikes arriving with American braking standards. So we all had to get up at 6 a.m. the day before the launch, go to the motocross field in the middle of Canberra with a pair of tweezers and barbecue twine and manually change all the brakes over. And I also didn't know how to ride a bike, so that was probably not the best decision, but it did get me into like tech and mobility and the intersection of those things and data. So that's kind of how I then ended up in Compass and where I am now.
Okay, so just to recap, we have an airline, construction, a couple of psychologists, and a biking company, but we're all in technology. Okay, that's where we're going with this. Now, it sounds like a lot of people moved around and didn't really have a plan. I mean, but Jim, you said to me you kind of liked the software thing. I think that were your exact words. Kind of liked this software thing, so that's where you were going to go. You participated in some companies during some hyper growth in your career. So can you walk us through those early days and your first leadership roles and kind of what that looked like in technology?
Yep. So yeah, I think technology careers, like every career, can move around, pivots and twirls, changes a lot. But I really liked developing, and that was the thing that I enjoyed. I could develop for hours and hours, and time would fly. I don't know if there's any other coders in the room. Yeah, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So I crashed. Answer crashed. It wasn't my fault.
Not the airplanes, the company.
The whole company crashed. So then I decided I wanted to join an R&D, research and development, where you do hardcore development. Yeah. So I went online and found a company called Quest Software pre-IPO. Everyone heard of the .com boom? We're kind of living it right now. Yeah. Anyway, so there was a lot of money in software development. I joined pre-IPO. There was like 6 people in a office with just on top of a bar, and that's how we started the company. And it was a US-based company, and ever since then I've always worked for US software sort of companies. And the Australian dollar was 53 cents, so we were like cheap development, yeah. And it grew from 7 to 170 R&D, QA testers, a really nice software development house, doing really modern development. I was talking to, not full stack, it was client server back then. That was cutting edge. And yeah, it was super exciting. And when you join a startup, it's a great opportunity to grow with that company. And that's kind of like the theme that I'm getting to. I was thrown into a leadership role like early 20s, not mid 20s. I wasn't ready for that at all. Didn't have enough experience, but with startups, you get these opportunities and haven't looked back. Yeah.
I like how you draw a parallel to now, because you can see hyper growth. I know there's a lot of people in recruitment in the room, all these lots of companies hiring. And then this week, a few companies, having to undo some of that, excess hiring and things like that. So, all that flux is very standard, I guess, in our industry. Now, whether you've been like displaced or not with one of these tech movements, or you're looking for a new role, you're trying to broaden your horizons, I'm going to throw back to Katie on you talked about moving around a lot, and a couple of you did, and feel free to interject when after this, is like, how did you recognize your strengths? You weren't a designer, you didn't want to be like, you wanted to go into tech, you want to do things. How did you kind of hone in on that and what you wanted to do?
I suppose the thing is, there'll be things that you do at work that you'll love, and there will be things that you'll do at work that you'll think, I just don't want to do any more of that. And if you focus your attention on those things that you love, you become really amazingly good at those things that you love. And I noticed that I really liked front-end coding. I'm a bit OCD, if I were honest. And so I noticed when things aren't quite perfectly aligned or the spacing's a bit off, and that's the designer in me. And so if you apply the things that are your strengths to something that you enjoy, you end up being able to go wherever you want with that, and you end up enjoying your job. And I think the really important thing is you're going to be doing this for the majority of your life. So work out what it is that you derive fun from, something that you'd be happy to do at home. I actually am someone that quite happily will sit at the TV and code, which is I look like a bit of a loser, but whatever. It's where your passion is, right? You're going to do that the majority of and the people around you. If you're doing something you enjoy, the people around you probably enjoy doing it too. So you'll make really long-lasting friends.
Yeah, nice. And tell me a little bit more about you lecturing at the College of Fine Arts and you critiquing, like, not being a designer, but able to be looking.
Yeah, actually, I'm really bad at design. I'm not going to lie. Having worked with some really amazing designers, I've realized I'm actually really bad at it. But that doesn't mean you don't have a good eye for it and that you aren't actually able to see when someone else is actually good at it or critique someone else's. So I'm a bit like an art critic, right? I can't paint the painting, but I can go in the gallery and go, oh, I like that one. And I think, I did. I used to lecture at the College of Fine Art and teach people how to do design, but I was useless at it myself.
Those who can and those who can't teach is kind of a saying, but it's sort of similar, right? Like you can still see what looks good. It's like UX and things like that. You might not be coding it, but you know how to use it. You're a user, you're the customer. So it could be something like that.
For sure.
I'm actually going to go a little bit off script. I'm going to throw back to Emily, which is not my next question, but it kind of leads into that. You were talking about, you kind of didn't give yourself enough credit. You said to me, you weren't you weren't techie, but then we got deep and you kind of came out with a lot of techie stuff that I didn't understand and had to get explained to me about smart cards. So tell me a little bit about, your interactions, I guess, with the tech in your business and how you're able to sort of distill that information, similar to, critiquing design work without being a designer. Can you walk us through a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, I can try. I think I was actually contemplating the idea of a technologist earlier today, and I feel like when I first thought about it, I kind of thought it was very synonymous with the ability to code and like being able to do software design or software engineering, I should say, which I can't do. I do a lot of the marketing and operation stuff in the business, and it's actually almost having to do a little bit of everything. So in order to market well, as most people who do marketing and stuff will know, is you need to be able to understand a little bit of the sales, a little bit of the software, a little bit of everything, and kind of smush it together, distill the value in a way that is accessible to customers or potential customers, because the customers who have the money aren't necessarily the ones who know how to understand all the tech. And then, but not strip it back so much that you actually then take out some of the more valuable terms. So like we have connected vehicle is a term that we throw around a lot. It's just basically like a car that has an internet connection and can transfer data. And there's a time and a place to maintain that higher level and then also make sure that you're still getting that value across in a way that people actually understand. I'm very much a big believer in brevity and that you don't have to write something super complex to make people understand that it is a complex idea. Does that answer your question?
And I think you said to me, you like take, 56-page PDFs and convert them down to like,
Yes.
readable, usable content depending on the audience who's consuming it.
So one of my favorite things to do, I do a lot of LinkedIn content I call them TLDRs, and I take really long government documents and I condense them into about 10-page carousels and make them look nice and steal other people's branding and use that as the base of my Canva design. So the Electric Vehicle Council came out with like this 56-page document, super cool, and still recommend people like read the full document, but also very understanding that people often don't want to read a 56-page document. So just distilling that value out of it, picking the main bits, breaking that up into separate like chunks that are more digestible, I guess. So almost like if somebody was reading you your books on an app, but instead I'm just condensing them down into like 10 little page carousels that you could swipe through on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So the technologist on the panel can correct me if I'm wrong. But if I'm a marketer or I'm a product designer, or I'm someone in a business saying I need to solve a problem, and they come to the technology area and they say, hey, here's all this stuff. You guys generally like condense it down into something that's usable or user friendly, or a program or an app or something. I mean, I don't know, that's kind of how I see it. So it's a very similar process in any part of that world. I don't know, Jim, you disagreeing? Okay. Just making sure you're awake. Okay, so everyone seems to have a good time. It's also me loving the sound of my own jokes. Okay, so going to Caroline, going back to the script, back to where we were going with this story. So you described you had passions for certain types of roles that you really wanted and you didn't get them straight away, and then, opportunities weren't there. How did you, find those opportunities or create those opportunities, or what is your sort of take on how to go and snatch that for yourself?
Yeah, good question. I think it's something that gets easier over time as your kind of experience bank kind of builds up and you become more in demand. If I reflect on the times that it was really hard where I wanted something and I was putting it out there and I wasn't getting it, is definitely when I had that like less than 5 years worth of experience when I was younger in my career, when no one would really take me seriously, and I was like, but this is what I want to do. So what I did do at that time was take on trainings for roles that I knew I wanted. So I was working in a company and they're like, you will be an Oracle consultant selling HCM software for the next 20 years. And I was like, oh yeah, but I don't really want to do that. We don't care. That is what you would do. And, my coach sat down with me and said, yes, everyone wants to sell the Mercedes or whatever, and that's great, but there's still more Toyotas on. I remember this conversation 10 years ago. There's more Toyotas on the road than there are, Mercedes. There was no Tesla at that point in time. And there's people that need to upkeep those vehicles, and you're going to be one of those people. And I was like, oh, okay. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to do enterprise architecture. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I did all the right things. Like I applied for roles, I did my training and my certification at TOGAF. And at the time, I remember my partner equivalent at the time saying, why are you doing TOGAF? It's an outdated course. No one cares. Well, yeah. Except then I went on maternity leave and I was going to a cafe daily with my child because she didn't sleep. And I would speak to people and I'd say, oh, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I would do. And I was applying for roles everywhere. I was applying for banks. I almost made my husband move to Toowoomba to take
Tech capital of Australia.
Then I made him, he was like, that's a terrible place. And I was like, let's go back again and make sure it's as terrible as you think it is before I turn down this job. And I told this man at the cafe, I was like, I'm going to move us to Toowoomba. And he's like, what the hell are you doing? He was on the brink of retiring and he got me an interview with a company called Deloitte that was specifically looking for enterprise architects with TOGAF experience. And then it just went boom, boom, boom. There's your manager position. Here you go. Here you go. So it really comes down to like one preparation, like do training, do courses, even if you're not using it, whether it's like now, don't do TOGAF, do cloud certification, but do stuff, do something so that you're ready when the opportunity comes. But then tell everyone that you know that you're looking, because people don't know that you're looking. People don't know that you're unsatisfied. People don't know what you want unless you put it out there, and put it out there and 1,000 people will say, I don't care. And one person will say, I do care and I can help you. And that was the pivotal point of my career, because that really swung me into being then in a place where I was learning the new skills that I wanted to learn, and it really set my career up, I would say. That's
So you've really just got to put yourself out there.
just put yourself
And
out there and prepare
And you're
train.
at events like this, and you can do that. You can talk to each other. You might not be hiring, but you might know someone in your company, and you can share details. And this is where you start your network, and go to coffee shops. And
I
big
drink
believer
a lot
in
of
eating different coffee shops, or
and
bars.
vodka, or like whatever.
Now I'm going to switch back to Emily really quickly, because you did just touch on like how you learn things, and I know you said to me you started a podcast.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that and how you learned from that experience.
Sure. So I started in Compass, and I know nothing about transport or data or any of the things I'm meant to actually be selling to people. And so part of the marketing that we did is we started a podcast, and the whole idea behind a podcast, it was like a sales angle to it, because then you can have like soft conversations with people and they don't know about you, and then they promote it because they're in an episode. But it was also just a really great format for me to like ask questions and not sound like an idiot. So they have this expertise in a particular area, and I'd be like, oh, can you like define that for the listeners? Definitely not me. And it worked, because people of course really like to talk about themselves and like share their knowledge. And so that became a really good place to, and a really like nice kind of safe conversational area to ask people things that I had no idea about and would like to learn more about, and that I thought other people would also like to learn more about, and combine that into some kind of like quasi self-taught marketing / channel for sales. Basically just trying to turn myself into a giant sponge. So that's kind of how that came in. And then it funneled back into content. I'm very much of the opinion that a lot of the stuff, particularly new tech, you don't really learn by reading things. It's by talking to people, because that's where it starts. So that's how the podcast came about.
Yeah, and I love that, because I learn a lot from talking to people. I learn from you. I'm a big YouTuber. Oh my goodness, anything that I can for my job. I just think lots of people taking big reports and turning it into a 5-minute YouTube, which is fantastic. Not on my script, but do other guys on the panel have, advice for where to learn? Because tech changes all the time. I don't know, Jim or Katie or, Caroline, anywhere that you sort of say is a good idea of where to pick up the next thing.
Oh, the next thing's hard, isn't it? But the current thing is, so when I was doing my PhD, my boss used to tell me that I had to read the top 5 news articles every day. From the top 5 journals, his top 5 journals, and he'd quiz me. I'd go and see him and say, "What have you read today?" Okay, did that happen? I'm not really interested, but it set a precedent. So I read things such as the AFR or IT News, or I have my own things that I read every day obsessively, just so I know what's happening in the market, because you don't know when you're going to have a conversation that is going to be important, when you need to know that. As you become more senior in your career as well, it's really a job to know what's happening, not just at your client or in your technical field, but more broadly. So getting into the habit of reading, like just pick 5 news sources every day, is really, I think, critical for me.
Nice. Anyone else?
I'd say if you're interested in software engineering and you're trying to decide what coding language should I focus on or something along those lines, I would recommend you go and have a look at the Stack Overflow developer surveys, because they will show you what the emerging trends are and what the popular tech is. And typically whatever the popular tech is, it's what's going to be in demand in the market. But look, my biggest advice is find the language or whatever it is that you actually enjoy. And, for me, it's CSS. I remember walking into Combank, you just reminded me, and they said, "Oh, you're a C# developer." And I said, "Sorry, what? No, I'm a CSS developer." And yes, I had become a C# developer. So yeah, anyway. But yeah, I think pick a language, learn it, get the idea of logic, and you can pretty much apply it to any language after that.
So you obviously love it. I'm hearing that you
love coding. Yes.
Do you still get on the tools for your job, even though you head up a team of engineers?
Yes. And I'm not supposed to, but I do. Yeah, look, you have no choice. And sometimes still coding is a good thing, because I can demonstrate to a team what I'm expecting of them, or, you know, I can pitch in and help. So at the moment we've got a big need for testing frameworks. So I'm pitching in and building some testing frameworks while they're all busy doing their day jobs. And yeah, I love it. Why not?
Okay, I love that. Passing back over to Jim. Now, you've got a little bit on the tools. You also said to me you love talking and you love like being client facing. So tell us a little bit about your sort of pre-sales and how you landed in that space. Yeah,
Sure.
give us a little bit of insight.
Yeah, like obviously I enjoyed coding and that was a passion for a while, but I sort of felt like, you know, I did a presentation at a user group. I got thrown into the deep end, do a presentation with the user group. And I sort of thought I really enjoyed that aspect of the role. And so that was what got me into more customer facing roles. And you evolve and you get better at your presentations and your demonstrations, and we do a lot of that now. And I found that I enjoyed technology, but also human interaction. So the myth that, you know, a software person is the person in the back corner, doesn't speak to anyone, that can exist, and that's fine if that person likes that. But, you know, people are people and they have different skills and what they love. And that sort of unlocked that aspect of my career, which I sort of now, I hit both spots. I've got 50% technology and I get 50% to talk to people, lead teams, but also talk to customers and present at seminars and do fireside chats and all that, which I love as well. So, yeah.
It's a bit of both worlds. And when you joined Okta, because you're fairly new to Okta, back to sort of knowing what your team is doing, walk us through how you like onboarded yourself.
Going back to getting on the tools, I mean, I'm a manager now. I shouldn't be on the tools. I should be managing spreadsheets and expenses
Fun.
and all that.
So much.
But I decided at Okta, and my boss was great enough to let me do it, to onboard as a solution engineer, right? So that I could chip in, not take over, you know, fill some gaps, but also understand the role. And I think as a leader in technology, but any field, having done the role and leading that team, you're so much better at it. It'd be really, I don't know, you can do it. It's not a problem, but it really helps you be a good leader of that particular team.
Yeah. So as you're developing your career, you don't want to leave everything behind and just be like, I'm wearing a manager hat. I mean, if there's a hat, maybe depends on the actual hat itself, but like you just want to get to know what your team's doing, as well as, you know, how to take them to the next level is actually, you know, getting behind that and supporting them. And, you know, as you sort of move through these careers, and there's lots of people in different stages in the room. So it's not all about talking to grads. It's talking about, you know, you already may be a leader here in this room. It's like, how do you accelerate yourself?
Yeah.
So really getting amongst it and loving it.
And then the only drawback is don't jump in and do the job or, you know, take over. That's what you could do. So it's a hard thing to stop doing.
And burnout. That also leads to burnout, taking the world on your shoulders. Back to Emily, because I find this story very interesting around your business, and that you kind of positioned yourself to me as non-tech. So I pick on you a little bit, but tell me about what is the most common photo in your phone, and why is it there, and what is your hope for the future?
It's not as weird as it seems, guys. So I have a lot of photos of potholes in my phone. And the reason behind this is because we have a product, we actually won a Google Cloud Award for it. We have a product that uses the axle movements in a car to try and detect road deterioration. So Lismore obviously had lots of flooding in March. They wanted to see how much the road had deteriorated and where the road had deteriorated the most. They prioritize maintenance and repair. We used our data to be able to show where those deteriorations happened. Turns out people really hate potholes, and particularly with La Nina, there's been a lot of them. So I run a campaign on LinkedIn, which have now officially turned into like a proper campaign called Pothole Patrol. People get so angry. I've had a lady actually from Deloitte the other day who's like, I will send you a photo. And I was like, I will post your photo. If you give me context and permission, then like, I'll do it. So yeah, my phone is definitely full of photos of potholes, but for good reason and for educational purposes, all that kind of fun stuff.
Sensors.
Yep.
Are they
like not every vehicle has sensors on the axle to detect that, right? Like, is this just special vehicles that are equipped with the equipment to be able to detect them?
So in most connected vehicles, which are, you start seeing them from about 2014 onwards, but every vehicle from 2020 onwards is basically connected. Yeah, so it's basically every single new vehicle has some level of
How
sensors.
many people do you think?
See,
Just
closet nerd. I love it.
Two moderators. Yeah.
And will that be like, would you be able to get that data?
Yeah.
Insurance mechanism for like this or police coverage?
Yes. So there's something called the roll, pitch, and the yaw of a vehicle. I didn't think I'd have to go through it. So there's the roll. So the car is rolling either side. The pitch, which is like the front going up and down, and then the yaw, which is like a fishtail. There's also a Z-axis, which is just literally a straight drop. When you've got, say, floods and roads that just completely destroyed, it makes it really hard to avoid the potholes. But we can also pick up swerving and braking. So if you're seeing that people on a straight stretch of road are kind of all swerving and braking really suddenly, you can then also be like, okay, well, maybe there's a pothole or something there that we need to check out, or something else with the infrastructure. In terms of the second half of the question, which was about the future, I would think I'd like in the future for my company to not have to exist. And the reason I say that is because we do a lot of stuff with road safety data, so the braking and swerving and the like. And that's all to do with going to Vision Zero, which is no road deaths. So if my company doesn't have to provide data about how many people have swerved or braked really violently at a particular intersection, or everything's done proactively, so they pick up potholes before they become potholes, then that would kind of be the ideal world. So Vision Zero for road safety, and also Vision Zero for like no potholes.
So yeah, then that was my point as well. Is like the non-techie person doesn't know how to code, but all this stuff you have in your mind is very technical.
Yeah.
And also it's all about user-generated content and how to get people involved and data from cars flying into the cloud, all these great things. But I would say as a skill or a trait, and you can all correct me, but I think visionary or visualization of ideas is something that I guess all of you have, is what I'm picking up. The more I spend time talking to you all, that's kind of where I get it, because you're taking what someone's thinking about and you're turning it into reality. It's very magical. Now, I'm just conscious of time. We've learned a little about moving and what have you. I'm going to sort of go back to Jim before I get caught up in this movement. As a leader, we could just touch on leadership then, so I want to make sure I cover this off. We're here, we're talking about diversity. We're talking about people in the room, from different backgrounds. How, as a leader, do you, think about diversity in your hiring practices, or in the way that you're trying to attract talent to these roles?
Absolutely. Like in the team, our APAC team is solution engineers. We have 2 females and 35 males. Yeah. So you put that on a chart, and your HR manager comes to you and says, that doesn't look that great. And it's true. It weighs upon you. It does. As a hiring manager, you're always thinking about, how do I fix that? How do I, make it better? And it's challenging, right? So, but then the other part of that is, as a hiring manager, you've got to fill a role. And if that role isn't filled, it's your responsibility. You get the pain. Your people who are supporting that gap have the pain. So on one side, you want to be more diverse, and the second side, you want to hire fast, and the people applying for that role are all males, predominantly. And you could be a victim, and I say, I don't want to be a victim. I've got to change the game. What can I do differently? And there's kind of 3 things that I've sort of picked up, and we're going to try and adopt some of these, and I am adopting these at Okta. One is, you've got to build that pipeline. Like, you got to go to these events. Steve, where is he? You got to go to these events. He's a recruiter, but we work together. We're a partner. We're a partnership. We've got to go to these types of events and speak to people who are interested in those kind of roles, and explain to them that it's not just hardcore technology. There's a great other side to it. Presentations, talking to people. That's one thing. The other thing is, you've got to be able to attract people early in their careers when they get a taste for it. because sometimes you get put down a path in your career and you feel like that's the only thing you got. So how about we have an intake program, a grad program, an intern program where we can bring young females from their courses into the organization early. And the third one, I was speaking to a friend of mine, Yuri, at Salesforce. They have a program where they bring people who can only work part-time back into the role. Really great expertise, and they've gone out and done things, have parents, children. Can you bring them back part-time? I don't have that ability, but wouldn't that be great? So those are the things that I think about trying to fix that problem. And we are getting better. 2 sounds bad, but give us some time. We'll get that done.
You're addressing it and you're recognizing it. I think that's part of it. And also when you're out there and you're looking for a role, whether it's the beginning or in the middle of your career, you've got the right to decide where you want to work. You've got the right to ask those questions. How many people in the team? What's it like? What's our policy on diversity? Like, you've got to interview people just as much as they're interviewing you. On the topic of getting new roles, to Carolyn, you told me that you wanted a role and then you had to turn it down.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it ended up working out? Because sometimes there are circumstances.
Yeah, it was kind of like semi-tragic, actually. So after I joined consulting, I learned about all the firms, and there's a hierarchy of firms, right? And I was like, there's tier 2 and there's tier 1. There's the golden tier. No, but I'd always aspired to work at the MBB, so the McKinsey, Bain, BCG of the world. And look, I stuffed around in undergrad, so my marks definitely weren't where they should have been. But I did get the PhD, so I was like, come on, you've hedged your bets. And then I thought, okay, well, what do I do next? Like, I really want to work for those firms. So I considered going back and doing my MBA when I was working at Deloitte, actually. And I was like, man, no more studying, just get over it. So I was like, okay. Then I got a tap on the shoulder by BCG and said, come and interview. We've spotted you. We want you to interview for us. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But I was heavily pregnant at the time. And I was like, look, I'll go through the interview process and everything. And then I went through and I got the offer, and I was like, I didn't tell them I was pregnant. I was like, there's no way I can take this. I've got one child under 2 already. I've got another child on the way. There's no way I can take this role. So I turned it down quite tearfully, actually, because it was like, oh, my dream, and that's my dream, and it's crushed, and I'll never get that opportunity again. Then I had my second child just before COVID hit. So she was born in February, then March came along. She was a bushfire COVID baby. And about a year later, BCG contacted me again, and they said, look, we're still really interested in you. Would you consider working for us? So I was like, oh my God, it's COVID. I can't travel. Like, one of the big things with that type of role is it's a very global role. So I was like, this is my one opportunity to take that role. So actually that opportunity came around again. I was able to take that opportunity, sort of tick off that bucket list item. There were so many tears the year before, thinking that like that was a once in a lifetime opportunity that I would never get again. But I did get that opportunity again. And I think that's like truism of, I think, all the tears I've cried throughout my career. There was never any reason for those tears or for those fears or for those feelings of frustration, because you ultimately do get the opportunities that you're supposed to get at the time that you're supposed to get them. So yeah, it turned out to be a sort of good news story. And then a year after being with BCG, I was like, oh my God, I'm too managerial. I'm going to get back to engineering. So yeah, look, lots of change. And if anyone ever wants to talk to me about, what it's like to change roles or opportunities and what that means, I'm happy to talk through that at any time. Just like reach out on LinkedIn.
And I think it's true of a lot of big tech companies and a lot in our industry, especially in Australia, it's quite small. Like, you get interviewed or called by the same company a lot of times in your career. I think I can't say which company, but I think they've tried to hit me like 3 times. And in the end I said no, but I'm like, no, they're not going anywhere. Like, they're definitely not going to crash anytime soon. So, maybe that's my job in my 40s when I want to relax a little bit. So you got to think about nothing is the be all that day. If you don't get the role, or, you know, that you get passed over, it'll come back. Or, you know, you just work hard at finding all the people in that company that you need to have coffee with, so that when it does come around, you're the first pick.
And yeah, and even on that, so when I had my job opportunity for Deloitte, I went to the interviews and then I didn't hear from them ever again. And I was just like, okay, well, that's clearly a no. But actually all that had happened is the partner didn't hand in the documents. And so they were like, he was busy and they never handed in the recruitment form. So always follow up. Even if it's an opportunity that you didn't get, like reaching out again and following up with people, because we're actually, everyone's a person that's on the hiring side or whatever, and things change within the company, things change, and you don't ever know what's going on. So
yeah, it's never personal. Last question for me, because I've gone all over the place, but going back to Katie, and this is a tech question, but it's something that we hear a lot about on our panels, and I didn't want to leave it. It's, you talk to me about values in your career. So it's not just what you like, but, you know, what's sort of true to yourself. And can you describe where that's fit in, you know, in what you do? Because it fits into everything, I guess.
Yeah, look, I think it's really important that at some point in your life, you work out what's important to you and you decide where you will and won't draw the line on certain things. And throughout my career, I'm a female software engineer. I think I've said that enough, but in a very male dominated industry, that can be quite tough. And I've had to deal with some really bad behaviors from male counterparts in the past. And, you know, you get to a point where you go, you know what, I am not going to just sit silently while you call me a diversity ratio. I'm going to tell you that's not cool. And I think you get to a point where you've got to stand up for yourself and say, you know what, I don't actually care if I lose this job. You're not treating me properly. I'm going to do what's right by me. I've had interviews that I've walked out of. You just got to stand up for yourself. And I think the only way you stand up for yourself is when you decide, these are my values and I'm not compromising on them. So I've had to do that more often than not, surprisingly.
And I think it's giving yourself permission. You know, no one tells you when you're younger that you have permission to say no to things, and then you figure it out later and then like, oh, wish someone had just said that to me. So now I tell everybody, you have permission to do whatever you like. You know, if it doesn't serve you, move on from it. If it's your dream job and the people there's no room for brilliant jerks in this world. Like if it's not right, you know, again, those companies aren't going anywhere. Come back around another time.
And don't be scared of them just because they're at a C level or a head of. I'm a head of. Don't be scared of me. Come and tell me if I'm being a jerk. I'm a human, right? Yeah, I'm a jerk. But it's true. Like, they're human. They're not infallible. So stand up for yourself.
Thank you. Now, I actually have 2 minutes, 3 minutes. If anyone wants to ask a question to any of my panelists, I will come give you the microphone. Anyone
be
in the room, don't be shy. If not, we can close it out and you can mingle and have wine and cheese. Anyone? Any takers? I know, it's like, sorry, but you. All right, my actual last question. Jim, can you tell us how you found out about Girls in Tech? Because I love this.
Oh, it's a good story.
Yes, please
So,
do, and this will be our close.
So the HR person, I just joined Opta 10 months ago. So it was in March, saying you got a diversity ratio, it's not quite right. And I go, I just started, you know, I got a little bit pissed off, and I was riding my bike to an event at the Marvel Stadium, small biz event, and down Docklands in Melbourne, and I saw the sign, Girls in Tech. And I go, well, I've got to go talk to those people. So I went up to the people holding the lollipop things, yeah, and I said, oh, what is this? And oh, it's about an organization that inspires girls to get involved in technology. I go, great, I've got to speak to you. And got a few names, hooked them up with Steve over there. And we're here today because of that.
Yes.
And that's the journey we sort of made. And I know Steve's attended a number of these. And if you're interested in technology and you're a little bit gun shy or don't think you're right for it, the role that we do in solution engineering and software organizations is something that can tick many boxes. I've hired people that aren't technical at all into a pre-sales role, and they're a solution architect at Red Hat, one of the hardcore technology companies of the world. So, you know, have a chat, network with people, speak to these great people, because I think technology is the future, and you can tick many boxes. You don't have to be that ultra hard geek coding during TV shows like I do. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And yes, you can meet people in coffee shops, get on your bike, see signs, connect with everybody. That's why we're here. That's why we do this. A big round of applause for our panel. Now, stick around for a little while. We have plenty of nibblies and drinks and things. Get connected with each other, add each other on LinkedIn, take photos with the sign. I probably didn't say it earlier, but hashtag, put it on socials, LinkedIn us, Instagram us, do all the great things, because the more people that know about this, the more events like this we can put on. If you want some merchandise, please go see KK at the back of the room. There's beanies, hats, all sorts of things. And I hope you had a really good night. Thank you for coming.